Okay, so we finished off the previous video. We just kind of had this localization, kind of standardization typography. And we're going to kind of move on and just kind of think of different aspects of policy when it comes to the internet. So we finished off talking, there's kind of a trade-off between globalization and localization. If you allow too much localization, then your brand can liable to be dissipated, and your brand will have different images in different countries, and that particularly if people are traveling between the countries, that'll be a mess. But if your kind of internet presence is too standardized, then you're not really accounting for local tastes and culture. So we're kind of move on, and we're going to just kind of give some examples about how we utilize the web in product development. I'll give some examples of kind of customer co-creation, where we help, the consumers actually help us with our products. And then we'll talk a little bit about social media. Okay, so we talk about kind of some of the aspects of how the web affects business. And one of the things is price transparency. Now, we've already talked about price transparency in terms of a single currency earlier this kind of semester, but let's just do a Google shopping search. And we're going to search for a Canon printer. And so let's just say, let's get a popular printer. This one's obviously a popular one. It's in 10 stores. And we get a shopping comparison. And we can actually get the full total price, including kind of shipping and including tax. And we can kind of compare, different people selling it online, different providers. So that's kind of an example of price transparency. And of course, price transparency will work across countries. Now, obviously, price transparency is going to affect my business. If I'm selling like basic commodities like printers, consumers might just go to the lowest price shop, assuming some price transparency, which is going to make it very difficult for smaller providers to actually survive. I mean, what can we do as a kind of a corporation in response to price transparency? Well, we could try and you just have to align our prices with the lowest of the prices. We'd have to go for a pricing strategy, which will work if we are a relatively low-cost provider. We could try and give extra value. We could localize our products. So, for example, with printers, we could make sure that they have the correct language packs. If we're selling some sort of maybe educational software, we can see it's, localized for the local curriculum. And in that way, global price transparency maybe doesn't affect us that much. And also, we can just kind of give up and just kind of concentrate on a market in one country. Okay, the next thing is this idea of group buying. Now, group buying was like supposedly the next big thing, and it was going to kind of revolutionize the internet. It's never really taken off. Pure group buying means that the idea is we can get discounts by having individual consumers kind of banding together, and almost with economies of scale, we can get a lower price. Because generally, if you buy 50 of it, it's cheaper than if you buy one of it. And there are various platforms called Living Social and Groupon that allow group buying. Though these aren't really pure group buying. They tend to just offer deals. They don't, in a purist sense, we would not be able to get the deal until, for example, 100 people signed up individually, then all 100 people could get the deal. But that's an example of this idea of group buying. And here's some examples. I got some from Living Social. And it just shows, okay, dinner with 2 bottles of wine with a local provider. Must be some local provider. Half $52 reduced from $115. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about kind of customer co-creation. And I'll just kind of go to a website, and I'll just kind of stop the video, and I'll give you a few examples of customer co-creation. Okay, so here are a few examples of customer co-creation. This website, I linked to it in the slides, just gives you like a load of examples of companies that kind of successfully co-create. So let's just go through a few of them. IKEA allows you to kind of design furniture online, and kind of has co-creation where you can actually build some furniture ideas. Unilever actually has kind of has a range of ideas where they want people to kind of you know, come up with ideas. Though most of these, if you're not really a chemist, I'm not sure how many ideas I could come up with for natural materials for stain removal or tough stain removal. Lego allows you to post, and the Lego one's kind of quite famous. It allows you to kind of post Lego ideas. And here we have Wallace and Gromit, Lego bookends. And the idea is it's kind of getting the Lego community involved. Oh, here's from Spirited Away, the Japanese animation. And it's a way of building the brand, but it's also a way of, basement and sewer. Yeah, so we get the Lego one's probably the most interesting of all of them. So it's kind of a nice way of building your brand and also kind of getting genuine ideas from your kind of customers. And so what does the book say about this? Well, you need a degree of credibility. Well, obviously a big company like Lego has a degree of credibility, but you need to kind of show to the customers that, you know, the people taking their time to help you co-create, that their ideas will be valued. Just to give you kind of another example, DeWalt is a kind of provider of power tools, so they would get a panel of, you know, contractors and people in, you know, advanced users of their power tools to look for ideas. So that's another nice example of customer co-creation. Sometimes we'd have incentives. Sometimes those incentives will just be, you know, to be featured in the community, to have your idea recognized. Other times it may be monetary incentives. The rest are kind of, you know, almost common sense, that we need some decent leadership in terms of actually the co-creation effort. We need kind of a clear vision. And, you know, our brand, before we engage in co-creation, we need to have a strong brand ourselves, you know, to encourage people to co-create. You know, Lego has an incredibly strong brand. And co-creation is often part, you know, occurs often as part of brand communities. Now, brand communities are basically just kind of almost, they're used for branding. And they're where they're designed to engage your consumers and kind of feel a sense of belonging between your consumers. So generally they would be, for example, a blog, discussion boards, people allowed to talk about the product, people allowed to be involved in the product. People may be becoming advocates for the product if we have consumers who are very strongly focused and kind of identify with your product. So here's some example of some nice kind of one for this kind of range of gyms called Gymshark. And we have a range of blogs. We can maybe have a bulletin board. We can have some fitness ideas. So the idea is it's bringing your consumers and bringing your brand together. And sometimes these will feature some degree of ideas from consumers or customer co-creation. So there's the idea. So beyond co-creation, one other thing we need to talk a little about is services. So just let me get the right thing. And how services, you know, are affected by the web. Now, services can mean a lot of things. You know, hairdressing is a service. Renting a car is a service. A service is basically something which is intangible, in that, you know, we can't put it in a cupboard. We can't really, well, I guess we can have a patent for a service concept, but, you know, it's not a physical thing. We can be simultaneous, or simultaneity as the book puts it, And the idea is the service is created as we consume it. So somebody is cutting my hair, they're creating the service, and I'm consuming the service. Somebody's lending me a hire car, they're creating the service as I am consuming it. We also have heterogeneity, and this just basically means there's you know, a higher degree of variation in services than there is in products. If I to buy a certain standard product, whether it be a chair or a computer, I'm going to get the same thing pretty much every time. If I go for a haircut, I can go to the salon, but I might get a slightly different experience each time. And perishability, this is the fact that we can't actually save or store the service. So, and I mean, I guess with the web, some of these things can be changed a little bit. For example, if I have a website offering a service such as car hire, so here we have Kayak, and I say want to hire in Atlanta, I can kind of get a degree of consistency between all of these car hire companies. I can make sure there's certain standard features. I can compare the prices online. I can compare all the different service attributes. So I guess we can make the service a little bit more consistent, at least, lower the heterogeneity a little bit. Okay, now the book, as I said, I've talked a lot about omni-channel retailing in this class. Now, the book, when it talks about, the rise of internet retailing, it talks about the replacement or complementarity effect. So, the idea is that I can have a chain of stores, they're not making business anymore. So I go to a completely online model, i.e. my stores are replaced. Or I could do like Walmart, I still have my stores, but I increasingly utilize the internet channel, both for pickup pickup delivery and home delivery. So that's kind of complementary. Now we talked about, omni-channel. I talked about omni-channel retailing. The book talks about online to offline businesses and also click and mortar. And the description given on both is very, very similar. So I'm not going to ask an exam question that tells you to differentiate between the two of them. They both kind of come under the banner of omni-channel. Recall, omni-channel is kind of, we're aiming for this seamless integration between online and offline. I can browse for some clothes online. I can save my preferences. I go into the store and I have my personal shopper in the store has the clothes ready for me to try on. I can buy online or offline. If I could look at something online, they don't have the color, I could buy the right color online, and I can return from either channel. So that's kind of the aim. We also have a few other things mentioned by the book. The virtual shopping malls, that's like Alibaba's Tmall, the one I showed you on the first slide, of kind of the Chinese internet site Alibaba set up like a traditional shopping mall with different kind of sub-shops from different providers. So just to kind of, summarize, the sort of model we utilize and how we utilize depends a lot, on the customers for our product type and on the country. What sort of, costs we have, what sort of kind of cost structure we have. Are we going to go to sell things as cheaply as possible? In which case we probably want maybe, a large distribution system, mostly online. Or do we perhaps want to offer a bit of in-store kind of customer service as well? And also we need to think a little bit about, we've already talked a little bit about the government's role in e-tailing, the fact that taxes and rules and regulations tend to be different in different countries. A lot of countries see these big American retailers like Amazon as something of a threat. I know in France they introduced taxes on these retailers just so the local retailers could compete. So here's a nice little example of the omni-channel. This is the British retailer Topshop. Kind of targets like 20s and 30s women. And it's almost like, the tradition of the fast fashion concept H&M we've talked about over here. And they use a strong omni-channel. They tend to, in the US, in the UK they had all the stores in the high street, but in the US they've decided, okay, it's very difficult to expand retail in the US. We're not going to try and compete. So we just have a few flagship stores. I know they've got a store in Chicago, Magnificent Mile, in New York and Los Angeles to build their brand, but they're predominantly an online retailer. So that's kind of the strategy they've gone for in the US as opposed to the home market in the UK. Okay, so I won't kind of you know, go through this in too much detail. This is just saying, do we want to kind of replace, or are we going to be complementary? And it depends on things like the customer's access to the internet, how much extra value we get from the internet, how easy it is to deliver the product, you know, online, how fast can we do delivery, you know, the cost of delivery relative to the price. If it's like we're delivering like very big, heavy objects, it might cost like more to deliver the object than the actual cost. So people would prefer to pick it up themselves. That's why, you know, we still have need for Home Depots. We still have need for Lowe's, you know, how standardized the products are, and basic customer preferences. And, you know, some of this is probably, I'm not going to test on this diagram. It's probably a little bit out of date. Okay, so the internet can be actually kind of quite utilized in terms of online advertising. So the book talks about banner ads and search engine advertising. So let me give you a kind of a quick example. So say I've had enough of teaching and it's, you know, it's getting winter. I want to search for an all-inclusive Jamaican vacation. I'm going to get some searches from Google. And you notice here that the top ones, these are kind of have ad on them. These are like paid searches. And then we kind of go down and these are the actual based on the Google search ranking. So let me just kind of take a little snippet of this. So these guys here, these are what we call paid search. Or sometimes kind of keyword search. So what's happened is that these advertisers have actually paid a certain amount. You know, they actually will bid with other advertisers on Google keywords for the kind of my all-inclusive Jamaican vacation. So if I'm a vacation provider in Jamaica, I might put bids on like Jamaican vacation. Vacation Caribbean, etc., etc. And the process of doing that, it's actually kind of quite a skill set. If you want to work in internet marketing, that's actually called attribution, keyword attribution, to work out, you know, what are the best, if you're a company, what are the best keywords to bid on. Now these, from like here down onwards, this is what's known as organic search. And how high you are is determined by Google's algorithm, which the basic version is called PageRank. And this is based on something like, you know, how popular your website is. So if my website has millions of views a day, it's more likely to be at the top with more than 10 lines of view. Do I link to kind of the sites I link to? Do I link to kind of other relevant sites, or do I link to like a load of random sites that have nothing to do with holidays? And things like the metadata. That's just information behind your web page that explains what your website does. So that's a little bit more than you need for this class, but just be aware there's different ways we can do the internet advertising. I thought I could try and explain it a little bit better than the book. Okay, and again, I gave you the example of the Jamaican holiday, but, you know, an online campaign it's just kind of a very complex thing. You know, you will have paid search and organic marketing. You may have social media marketing. You may have something called retargeting. And what retargeting is, if I go to a certain website and I put something in my shopping basket but don't buy, that behavior is noted and I'll actually get adverts for that product because I've been very close to buying it. So it's a lot better than sending me a random advert. Other things we can do, we can measure web analytics. So we can kind of count we can count some information on websites. Now, just let me give you a little bit more info on this. I'll do a snip again. So if basically we'll do things like, we'll count the number of views from the website. So we'll count views. We will, we sometimes count the bounce rate. These are the number of people who jump onto my website but then say, oh, this is a terrible website, so they bounce off it. We might count conversion. So the number of people who actually come to my website and buy something. So there's lots of metrics you can use. And if you actually have a website, then there's a tool from Google called Google Analytics, which is free. And we can measure sentiment or buzz. And let me just give you an example of that. So let's go to Twitter. And let's do a search for, let's keep away, everything on Twitter is politics at the moment. Let's keep away from that. Let's do a search for Starbucks. I can I can program what's called an API, application program interface, to look at Twitter, and I can download all the tweets about Starbucks, and I can actually measure the sentiment of these tweets, whether they're positive sentiment or negative sentiment based on the words used. If you want to know more about that, then you're going to have to take my advanced analytics class. But you would actually, we can't escape from politics anywhere at the moment. So this is kind of, you would look for people giving positive about Starbucks, negative. We'd maybe look at the Starbucks. We'd maybe look at the hashtag. When I teach marketing research, I actually have people play around with a tool called TweetDeck. And this allows you to kind of analyze different feeds. And this is what you would do if you were kind of a job of a social media manager. You would look through these feeds and even manually look to see what people are saying about your brand and maybe respond to them. So we've got one where we're looking for the hashtag Mississippi State, MS State, and we can kind of collate a load of Mississippi State tweets based on that Twitter. So again, we can only do a little bit in this class, but it's kind of a very complex thing. Online reviews, again, that's a huge subject I don't have time to go into, but Amazon have online, most websites now have some kind of online reviewing system. So if I was to go to, say, the Amazon website, and let's just have a look at their Epic Daily Deal, and we can kind of just see the reviews for each of these kind of products. And again, we can look at the numerical scores for the review. We can actually do some actual sentiment analysis on the reviews. There's a lot of techniques now for actually detecting fake reviews. There's a website called FakeSpot that actually looks at patterns in the reviews and tries to work out which products have a lot of fake reviews. Online reviews are not all reliable. But again, this is a huge subject. So I won't go too much into it because I could talk forever about this subject. So I'll just finish off with a fun little example, online reviews. So this was the Netflix challenge. And basically, Netflix have online reviews. And based on people's reviews and what they buy, Netflix recommends movies to people. And it recommends based on their previous purchase behavior, which movies they click and maybe don't actually buy, and their online reviews. So they actually did a challenge, and the winning team to predict basically what we do is we kind of have people's reviews and would remove a few of them, which we call the holdout. And then based on the other reviews, we try and predict their review scores or for certain the items where we've removed the review scores and see how close we are. So we're just trying to predict people's reviewing behavior. So Netflix actually had a $1 million competition where you had to improve on the Netflix algorithm, and it got like, you know, the groups from like AT&T to, you know, fathers and sons at home trying to predict, you know, build algorithms for predicting reviews. And so, you know, if some of this stuff is kind of easy. So if I like the Saw movies, then I'm probably like going to, if I'm a teenager who likes horror movies, I'd probably like rate all these movies 5 out of 5. I'd probably recommend Saw 3D. We could also, you know, we've talked about market segmentation in this class. We could segment our consumers. Say, for example, I liked these three films here, and I disliked science fiction and horror movies. You can probably put me together with other consumers who have similar consumer tastes. So a segment of consumers who likes these chick flicks but dislikes these films, and then, you know, if I've if I've not seen a movie before, they would look at the review scores of the people in my segment and then decide whether to recommend me the movie. So you know, it's a difficult problem, of course. You know, this is an example of why it's a difficult problem. Sleepless in Seattle, is it a chick flick or is it a star vehicle for Tom Hanks? And people, when they review, it's not just the quality of the movie, it's very much the occasion and the time period. There's a lot of variables going into it. And I thought this was an interesting example. And I do have a little question if I was teaching this in class, and this is which movie was the hardest to actually predict? And the answer to that, it's a movie. It's a movie with, like, you know, a really strange sense of humor, and the answer was Napoleon Dynamite. All these PhDs working on the problem still found it, you know, almost impossible to predict whether you would like Napoleon Dynamite or not. Okay, and then the last little topic, I won't spend too much time on this as this was our class discussion this week, but the book describes this idea of key opinion leaders marketing, and as we discussed in our little class discussion, this can range from, you know, huge influencers like Miley Cyrus, Kim Kardashian, to this was the Hokey Pokey example where we identified these kind of micro influencers, people who blogged and talked on social media about food or maybe their kids, and then we actually got hold of these people and we gave them free ice cream and let them design their own flavors of ice cream and had them post that on their social media. And we used that as what we call kind of a micro influencer kind of campaign. And I did actually, I won't go through it, but I actually found a link of the top influencers on Instagram. So if you want to look who's influential in Instagram, just follow that link. Okay, and that's it for